Hanoi.
Well, let's talk about this a little more. Joining me now is Dean Cheng, who's a Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Welcome here to the programme. So, did the abrupt end of this summit surprise you?
Yes, it did, in the sense that, like many, we expected to see some kind of agreement. But at the same time, as Mr. Trump wrote in his own book, you do have to be prepared to walk away. And I think that that's sending a very interesting signal to Pyongyang and other capitals in the region.
Why do you think it was that the president travelled halfway around the world only for this to fall apart relatively quickly? Was it a lack of preparation? I was reading that the North Koreans had signalled that they would ask for an undisclosed price for denuclearization, and when the price was actually delivered, total sanctions relief, but for just one nuclear site, that seemed to take the Americans by surprise.
I think that the North Koreans, to their credit, are basically bargaining in a very hardball fashion. Ask for the maximum, offer the minimum, and see what happens. I suspect that with other past experiences, they expected the United States to probably accept, if not quite the North Korean offer, perhaps offer some sanctions relief in exchange for pulling a little more out of North Korea. I doubt that the North Koreans expected the abrupt end either.
So do you think it was the right thing to do, to say simply no and just walk away?
Given what we know of the North Korean offer, that they wanted a complete end to the sanctions regime, absolutely. I think that that is simply not an option short of North Korea really delivering full-blown denuclearization. We've had too many examples of the U.S. And South Korea and Japan paying repeatedly for promises of the Yongbyon complex being turned off, only to have that not occur, and the North Koreans redemand even more. So I think, yes, this was the right thing to do.
So what happens now? I mean, it's not a total disaster. Clearly, the two, and we're seeing them on the screen at the moment, clearly they get on, and even that it was cut short, there weren't sort of words that were hostile. Where do we go, though, from here to actually try to make progress?
Well, I think that the key is going to be what Kim Jong-un does once he gets back to Pyongyang. We have had a cessation of both nuclear and missile tests for about a year at this point. If Kim Jong-un renews tests of either missiles or nuclear weapons, I think that the situation will deteriorate very rapidly. I think that if, on the other hand, North Korea holds to that cessation, then I think there could be room for a third summit sometime probably in the next calendar year or so.
And what is the time frame of all of this? Because one thinks back to maybe 12 months ago, perhaps even a little less, and at that stage the US president was talking about a massive urgency. This was the world's probably most pressing problem. Now, given what you've just said, given what we've just seen, we're talking about just a pause to testing and seemingly months of where we are now. I mean, and can the timeline be like that?
Well, Mr. Trump has said repeatedly that he's in no rush. Initially, I think many of us thought what he meant by that was that he was in no rush for North Korea to denuclearize. I think that what we saw in Hanoi is also that he's in no rush to actually have some kind of final agreement. So long as North Korea halts its nuclear and missile tests, in some ways that is an improvement on the status quo from when Mr. Trump came into office in January of 2017, when North Korea had conducted something like 5 nuclear and multiple missile tests in the previous 4 to 8 years.